We will skip 21 to 38. They're all quite interesting, but let's just say that the Freemasons are trying to limit the Catholic Church even as to teaching the doctrine of the Church. They are certainly limiting it, 24 27, as to its power in the world. The Freemasons want to take away any power of the Church in the world. It's this argument you hear, oh, the Church needs to be all spiritual. It doesn't need to have any clout or kick in the world. And it mustn't have any clout or kick in the world because that's nasty. And Jesus Christ was nice. No, given original sin, given that men are naughty, the Church is going to need to, for instance, to possess her own buildings. If she doesn't possess her own buildings, sooner or later, the man who does possess the building says to the Church, I own this building, you come into this building, I'm going to say how Mass is going to have to be celebrated in this building. I'm the owner of the building and I'm going to call the shots. He who pays the piper calls the tune, I'm offering to the piper his building, so I'm going to call the tune. And that's why the Church has to own her own buildings, so that there won't be that interference. Ideally, all the laymen would be so nice and so sweet that they would never try to interfere. But there is a devil. And a man may begin by making a very generous offer to the Church, but then the devil begins to work on him. Some priest crosses him. He doesn't like the way he brushes his hair or whatever. Or maybe he insults his wife or something, I don't know. And then that man doesn't any longer starts trying to exercise control. And the Church can't live with that. The Church has to be independent. Because the Church has to be independent, therefore, it must, for instance, own property. Similarly, in the Middle Ages, the Church owned not only property, the Church owned the whole central belt of Italy, the Pontifical States. And it was a system that gave to the papacy a great independence, an independence that the papacy needed for religious reasons. In other words, the needs of religion itself require that the Pope and the Church and priests have a certain measure of worldly power in the world and not only spiritual power. If you read the text, you will find that the word that's used is often temporal. Temporal as opposed to eternal, or temporal as opposed to spiritual. And the argument is that the Church must concern itself only with things spiritual and things eternal. Therefore, the Church should have nothing to do with anything worldly or temporal. It's a false argument. It would be nice if it worked, but it doesn't work. The devil exists, people have original sin, and therefore the Church needs to have its own property. The Church even needs, you have that in error, the Church needs to be able to use force. Where is that? Yes, number 24. The Church has no worldly power is the error, and the Church may not use force. No, the Church may use force for religious purposes. The Church may have prisons. The Church may have courts, its own courts. So there you have unworldly power. On communications, the Freemasons want to cut the Pope off from the bishops. They wanted, or kings, or to cut the bishops off from the Pope, so that the Pope won't reinforce and back and support the bishops, and then the king can squash the bishops as he likes. No, the Popes and the bishops, the Pope and the bishops must have free communications. Clerical immunity. Clerics, to be servants of God, need to be free from military service. It's in the nature of things, it's in the nature of the Church. It's not normal that clerics who are meant to serve God should be obliged to do military service where they may have to kill. Therefore, clerical immunity belongs to the Church. The 35, for instance, it would be possible, not the Church, but a General Council could move the Church, move the papacy from Rome to somewhere else. The universalities of the Church is interesting. The Pope, there could be national churches, like the Church. The Church of England is a perfectly reasonable institution. because it's English and it's in England. No, it isn't. It's false. It's a false church. The national churches have no right to exist. They're not true churches. The only true church is the universal church under the Bishop of Rome, who is the Pope. Then the state rights unlimited, the second page. The principles, okay, we'll jump a lot of these, but the principles are the two great principles. As all right comes from the state, so state rights are unrestricted. All right. In other words, the one who declares what is right and wrong in the state is the state, and not the church. The church has no say in what is right and wrong. The state has all say, the church has no say in what is right and wrong. That's in Latin, right is jus, and say is dico ditri. Therefore, the one who says what is right has jurisdiction. The jurisdiction is the saying of what's right. We would call it, say, the calling of the shots. All shot calling belongs to the state and not to the church is the error. Second principle, church teaching is opposed to the good of human society. We saw one like that earlier under rationalism. That's pure Freemasonry. The church has done nothing except harm mankind and cause mankind to be backward. All progress comes from Freemasonry and from liberalism. Complete nonsense if you look at it honestly. On the contrary, Freemasonry is diabolical in its heart and core, and the church has never ceased to do good despite the human failings of the various ministers. But the Lord God is great enough and big enough to work around the human failings of his ministers. That's why there's one reason why I don't believe in sedevacantism. I don't believe that the Pope is not Pope, because I believe that the Lord God is big enough to work around even today's liberal popes. They're not good popes, but the Lord God can work around them. The Lord God is, human beings are not great, but the Lord God is great. 41, 42, 43, 44, you've got 42 is written. If church and state law conflict, state law prevails. That's again, the one who ultimately calls the shots is the state and not the church. No, it's an error. The one if church law and state law conflict, then it's the church law is going to prevail, because the church's end is higher than the end of the state. The state only exists for the well-being, the material well-being and prosperity of the people, so that the people will be able to go to heaven. There is no state on the face of the earth that does not exist by God's permission in order to serve the salvation of souls. States have no other purpose than the salvation of souls. And that's why church law prevails over state law. Because the church is much more directly concerned with the eternal salvation of souls than the state. That's anathema to liberals. Absolute anathema to the modern world. Try saying that the church law should prevail over state law today. It doesn't make sense to many people.